This is the Atlas Emotion series, where we share edge of the earth ideas for a new world. Hello, and welcome to another Atlas Emotion series podcast. My name is Ella. It's really amazing to be with you here today. I have an interesting yet a strange episode ahead. It's called The Neural Network, and it features my friend Hala El Khoury, who is currently doing her doctorate in neuroscience. And she's specifically researching Alzheimer's and dementia. So we were having dinner one night and something really fascinating came to me. What if we could look at the space of our greater world through the eyes of a human mind? So basically comparing the way that our neurons and the connections and the networks that work in our mind with a global mind. And how is it that fear blocks certain pathways from occurring or certain connections occurring? And how is it that love ignites and sparks those pathways? So in the greater network, in the greater worldwide mind, how are we blocking natural information flow? And how are we able to re-spark or reignite that information flow? Specifically, as this podcast was coming to me, I had insights like distrust and mistrust is what blocks the flow. And with those blocks cleared, we can receive a lot easier. So basically, the clearing of the emotional blocks within us, how that can pave the way for us to be more connected to our greater global mind, the already existing network. So this is what the analogy is all about, to show us that we are all already part of an interconnected ecosystem and network in our greater worldwide mind, but it's just about clearing those blocks, opening the pathways of communication, and opening the network of connections that is already available to us. So this is part of a 3-part series. Part 1 was called Voice, and this is the second one, the neural network. And the third one is called Our Personal Family, Our Global Family. How do they connect? Well, really the first step in becoming connected with your greater global network or your greater global family is to inhabit fully your purpose and your voice, your true voice. Then you're able to connect with your greater network from that purpose-driven place. But the intermediary step, the step before you connect with your greater global family, is importantly to address the fears and blockages within you and to clear those, to reveal the connections that were already available to you in the network that you already have. This episode is a little bit of theory and a little bit of surmising how we could be relating to our greater global network as individual cells in a greater system. Specifically, as I have watched myself clear and heal my own body and my own network of cells within, I have absolutely watched as the connections and the communications that were already available within me and around me have become clearer and easier, and those networks or those connections to new people that I was hoping to meet naturally arise. As Hala and I chat in this conversation, I would love if you could imagine that for every time we are talking about the personal mind, this could be overlaid to the global mind. What if we already are existing in a global and interconnected mind? And how do we reconnect and re-enliven that network? I hope that you enjoy this episode. It's a little bit of a big one, but there's a lot of cool ideas in here. So I look forward to joining you again, and here's the episode. So hello, and welcome to another Atlas Emotion series podcast. My name is Ella, and today I'm with my great friend Hala.
Hello.
And we are in Hala's family home because we've got some podcasts coming up that are all about our relationship to our personal family and how that ripples out to our global family. And Hala and I were having a conversation over dinner one night about her work and how there may be analogies drawn to a greater mind or the greater mind of our planet. And so I'd love, just by starting, if you could introduce yourself and what kind of work do you do?
I will start with the more personal side of things, I am a wife and a mom. I feel like, gosh, motherhood is a huge part of my identity right now. But I am also a researcher. In particular, it's neuroscience of the neuroregeneration. I've been working on light for my neuroscience research. What I'm referring to is waveforms and them having the ability to pass through our skin, through our skull, and into our cells, and affecting certain parts of these cells. When this happens, a rescue mechanism occurs. It's stimulated. And so cells in the brain that were in the process of dying are then given a burst of energy, and they regenerate or they get rescued.
So can you tell me how that relates to your research in Alzheimer's and dementia?
They are diseases of the aging population, and that's the degeneration of cells in the brain. And that's going to affect the way they connect and remember things. So my research and the light is an alternative type of treatment that helps the neurons regenerate and reverse that Alzheimer's effect, that loss of connection, that loss of memory.
So this is actually quite an interesting episode, because what we're going to be doing is drawing an analogy between what you've just mentioned, chatting about how does that relate to our greater Earth. How is it that light or information in our greater network, if you imagine that our planet and each of us as cells are either transmitting information with ease and flow or getting blocked. The conversation today is interesting because, what does Alzheimer's have to teach us? I had a dream, and in this dream, what I saw were these traffic lights, and my friend was there, and basically I was feeling like I was getting really competitive to build this traffic light system. But it was the competition and my competitive nature, my jealousy, that was creating a blockage in the system. And soon after, in the dream, I saw that it was like a butterfly effect, and there were these people that were getting sucked into this hole. The big metaphor was that the thing that partly blocks this network is comparison and jealousy, because it basically creates like a distrust. And to really allow information to flow easily, it's all about trust.
Wow.
So, can you tell me a little bit about how you found that Alzheimer's forms or these diseases form?
From my knowledge about Alzheimer's and how they form is these blockages. I wouldn't exactly call them blockages. That's the thing. Because in dementia diseases, the cells, the proteins that are involved with the structures, they tangle and they lose their structure. And so connections that were previously there are not able to continue on anymore. And eventually these blockages and these distortions result in the death of those neurons, and then it gets wiped out. So if I was to go back to the metaphor, the thing that starts it is the tangles. We call them neurofibrillary tangles, and they're like plaques. And that is essentially the start of what causes these blockages. These tangles stay around, and they influence other proteins to start looking like that too. And it spreads.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
So if you're following along at home, the analogy is that imagine just what Hala mentioned about the tangles, and what I'm actually referencing here is if we imagine a healthy Earth, we have healthy information flow, we have very healthy cells, and there's an ease of health, there's an ease with our belief systems, and there's a fully sustainable planet. What the comparison is here is potentially that the fear-based beliefs that we've held have created tangles, have created knots, and block and even create the death of certain cells' information flow. I hope you're following along at home. This is a more complex episode than any of the others.
It is a little bit, because you kind of need a little bit of a neuroscience background, but we will do our best to, describe it.
This is all an analogy. This is all a conversation opener. And as we were talking about earlier, it's not a set in stone. It's an idea. What if we could use the personal mind as education for our greater mind?
When you look at a picture of neurons, like connecting to each other, the way they synapse, you take that picture and put it alongside an image of the cosmos, and you will notice that the neurons that have been photographed from inside the brain look just like the greater picture of the cosmos.
Yeah, cool.
And I just really wanted to put that out there to connect it with what you're saying, how on a smaller scale, it is a reflection of the bigger picture and what's out there.
I like that. So one of the other things that we talked about was I saw this TV show where I saw that people with Alzheimer's and dementia had music played for them. Yes. And we were talking about how inspiration, basically these people that had suffered from these diseases through music completely lit up, the music from their 20s, and you could see their energy change completely, and they became themselves. You could see themselves as 20-year-olds. So can you talk to me a little bit about your experience with this and the impact and the power of, in this case, I will say love, in this case, I will say connection, on these diseases?
It's a really good one. It's not the area of my research, but I can make a bit of a comment on it. If any of you are familiar with how Alzheimer's works, it's that the memories that are most recent are the first to unravel. And as we look at it, the memories that have been revisited over and over again, earlier memories from our childhood, they're a lot more secure. They are a lot harder to unravel. And some of which that are so difficult to unravel are our unconscious memories, like music or the cerebellum functions, the automatic things. And so when music that is actually familiar for that person, that is part of their identity, that has created the network in their minds, is replayed and revisited, the functional connections are reignited. And so that person who is, or who may have been, stuck in an Alzheimer's loop and losing their sense of identity, is then reactivated with the connections that they always had since they were young. That's why you see the light spark in their eyes again. They've gone back to who they were because that circuitry is being activated and it's being revisited.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's very cool, and it's quite emotional.
So basically the entire time as you're talking there, I was imagining that lighting up and absolutely and I'm going to keep comparing this to the world. I just really thought of the different places on our planet where there is a lack of information flow. There's difficulty there's blocking, potentially there's a closing down of channels through fear. And there are ways to, you mentioned earlier that the cells may even die, but what I'm inspired by and excited by in this analogy is that essentially love ignites them again. So in these places where we have these potential extreme blockages, the solution I'll throw in there is love and connection. And basically rekindling that trust. And obviously this is a longer and a deeper conversation, but what you mentioned there, that's what it brings up in me, that through inspiration and through a reconnection to self, we can reignite these places.
When you are experiencing fear, your higher processes are shut down and you go back to a very primal survival state. So your prefrontal cortex, it gets shut down when you are in a state of fear, and different networks get activated. And when you get out of fear and you come back into that space of love and trust, then the inspiration can kick in, because those higher processing areas are unblocked and allowed to function and do their thing.
And so allow us to attract more of what inspires us and what brings us love, joy, and expanding ourselves. I might just read some sentences that came to me as over the course of the month since we last spoke about this. Because to me, the idea of the blocks in the mind, the idea of the blocks on the planet are about trust. And so here are some of the phrases. Clear the lack of trust for a clearer signal. Trust actually gives lots of space. With greater understanding comes a greater freedom. Judgment solidifies pathways, but curiosity opens them. Wow. So we're all in a network. We just have to remember we're in the network. Yeah. And that's probably a really good place to summarize today's ambitious episode. Very ambitious. The idea here, for me, what's been fascinating is the idea of country borders and communication. And when you talk to me about your Alzheimer's research, I think about the ways in which we have created borders. So we've created distrust. So we haven't, we're basically in blocking that information flow and in the worst case scenario, preventing cells, aka preventing people, preventing ecosystems from thriving, from experiencing that inspiration once again. But the resolutions to this are across the world are a deeper understanding, more space for trust, which is obviously a lot of big conversations, and more space for inspiration, so that the universe and its natural greater network can really get us connected with the people that we want to get connected with around the world.
There is something that I've noticed through my experience as a researcher. What I've noticed is that there are lots of other people around me who have done research as well, and they've specialized in such a niche area, and they've done so incredibly well. And then when you ask them a broader question about the broader perspective, they shut down and they get afraid, even though what they know can really contribute to the bigger picture. So what I wanted to say is, if you are someone who has specialized in a particular area, your insight is incredible and it's valuable. So don't feel afraid to share what it is that you've learned, because based off of our conversation, it is adaptable to the broader picture, and it can be made so holistically.
Just to summarize, the idea is that we can look at the mind, and we can look at the diseases that have been caused in the mind, and see how that mind can be an analogy for our greater planet. And if we can look at the ways that our memories or our minds may shut down in ways, and have a look at the different areas on our planet where there's a shutdown of information flow through distrust. Well, then we can also know that there are ways to open that back up again, and it's through understanding, opening that trust, and re-inspiration again, creating more space. Yeah. We can see that all the information's there. The network is available to all of us. We are all part of a greater ecosystem. It's just about reopening those spaces in our lives that are perhaps a bit more closed down, and hence reopening the spaces on our planet which perhaps are a bit blocked.
I guess if we were to just translate it into action, and please add with me, but what I would suggest is it's always incredible to go back to your original why, or the original things that you loved. So for example, with the people that have Alzheimer's, going back to that music that they used to enjoy. So if there is something that you enjoy and you find that you've tried to grow and expand out of that, but then you feel a bit lost, just go back to that original thing that really sparked your interest in the first place. That's what I would suggest, on an individual scale anyway.
Thanks for coming. You're going to be on the next one as well, with baby in hand.
Yes, that's right. Big part of my life.
So we'll talk more about that in the next one. So thank you.
Thank you, Ella.
Hey, so I just wanted to give an example before leaving this episode, because basically in this episode we've been talking about how we can compare the idea of a human mind to a greater mind. If you imagine seeing the earth as a network or a greater mind, and taking a look at what blocks the network of information flow, ease and grace of synchronicity, and what perhaps allows it to flow. And since this episode, what's come to me is that trust is the key to unlock the neural network. The ability to trust one another, firstly to trust ourselves, is what allows the network to open up and for doors to open up. To be able to say to yourself and to others, I understand you and I forgive you. Now, I mentioned I wanted to give an example. I actually specifically had a dream last night, and the dream showed me how I was basically starting to create pitch documents. So that means in the film world, I'm creating ideas to send to different companies and different people to basically start creating films together. But I saw in this dream that I was holding on to old resentments, and these were old resentments and angers and frustrations from past relationships. So without me realizing it, holding on to being resentful and feeling unworthy in these past relationships was blocking the new doorways from opening. I came to write this diary entry that I found that heaven or pure flow or bliss or pure connection didn't exist for me without a sense of betrayal, manipulation, or deceit. Recently, I've had the dreams to basically reach out to big companies and start creating amazing projects with them. But alongside the dreams and the ideas have been me facing the parts of myself that feel like I can't have a trust in my ideas, and I can't have a trust in an easy flow or connection. So in this diary entry, I wrote to myself, I'm refining my vibration and signatures to release the patterns of old. The old house that I used to live in internally, of manipulation, betrayal, being lied to, deceived, things being difficult or painful. So basically, I'm talking about here having a look at the parts of ourselves that are attracting from those vibrations, attracting from the vibrations of feeling manipulated or betrayed, as opposed to aligning with our true, pure connection. And trust is the key to open those doorways. It's the ability to look at what is currently presenting to ourselves and to face it and to choose to trust. And I will say that I've been very active with this. Before I go into a new situation, whether that's writing an idea out or it's even meeting with someone, I tune in to what I like to call the energy of the new world, the energy of harmony, the energy of a pure and easy network of connection. And that starts with us and our inner network and our inner ability to tune in and choose that we will be able to have an easy connection. So if you're hoping to expand your business or even just expand your life, have a look at those parts of your life that feel like closed doorways. They're actually the key. And the ability to trust that even this closed doorway is a pathway to opening up new, bigger opportunities and to connecting you to that global mind, that global network, and your global family. There was one amazing example actually where a friend of mine and I are basically collaborating to create a film piece, and we wanted to connect with a big company. And basically after I did a lot of inner trust work and healing my inability to trust, immediately afterward we had an incredible connection come forward for that specific company. So it's not that things are impossible, but it is about having a look at why we've closed the door on ourselves and opening that up again in ourselves first. I hope you've had a great and enjoyable listen to this episode, and I look forward to connecting with you on the next one.